that bit of wall there, it doesn't look like much now, but that was holding back a huge pond. Effectively, it stored water, which then you could manage into narrow channels like this to turn a wheel very gently to deliver the power you needed.
But I mean, to my eyes, Stuart, I mean, if that's a dam, which I take your word it is, this inner face here looks for all the world like the inner wall of a building, doesn't it?
It does, and you're right, I'm sure it is, but this may all be timber, because we know a lot of these structures have timber framing, effectively, and you might have an open shed here with processing going on that side.
We need to clean up the dam so we can get a good look at its structure, and then open trench 2 around it, because there seems to be a building attached to the back of the dam which could be industrial. We'll also dig this man-made channel, where we're looking for a water wheel. According to the documents, an ironworks was established here in 1718. The first mention of a steel furnace comes in the 1740s, which valued the site at a whopping £4,000. Do we know much about the people who were involved?
The actual steel-making process is introduced into the Derwent Valley by a colourful chap called William Bertram, who was German in origin, and he went to Sweden and he seems to have learnt steelmaking in Sweden, because Sweden's the leading steelmaker at the time. He seems to be heading back to Germany, and he is mysteriously shipwrecked off Newcastle, and he ends up in Newcastle making steel, and then he ends up here.
Why do you say mysteriously shipwrecked?
Well, it seems all too easy, doesn't it? You've got an expert steelmaker, which you want in the valley, and somehow or other he ends up here.
Do you think he might have been poached?
I think he might have been poached. And certainly the Bertrams are here, father and son, for some time.
But all this needed money and investment and the possibility of people buying your stuff, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, in the 1730s, it's a real growth time for Britain. You've got a series of good corn harvests. You've got a lot of people who are prepared to invest in industry. And so you get the growth of the early industrial empires in this valley.
Back at Trench 1, Phil's got his pump and is finding more evidence of his furnace. Trench 2's also underway around the Mill Pond Dam. You can't really see because it's under all this greenery, but the water table is right here. If I'd been here 100 and odd years ago, I'd have been up to my neck in the mill pond. It didn't take long to clear the nettles, Francis, but you really get the picture of a complex water system here now, don't you?
You do. I mean, it's been fabulously successful, I think, just getting rid of all that vegetation. You really get a feel for it. Now, look, there's a photograph even. Now, this is an extraordinary thing. This was taken sometime between 1860 and 70, and it's looking in that direction. Now, we don't know what's going on inside this building, but look at this family here. They look pretty glum. He's got a lovely top hat, so he was probably quite a senior sort of chap.
But somewhere in here is that view. That's really tantalising, isn't it? I knew there'd be a photo, but if we can pinpoint the exact spot this photograph was taken, we could work out if those buildings are in our trench and what went on inside them. I know just the man for the job. So, as Stuart turns photographic sleuth, Phil's engineering a makeshift drainage system at his trench. And 5 feet down, it looks like he's ready to name our first industrial process. Phil! Managed to get quite a lot of the water cleared then.
Yeah, I mean, the most incredible thing about this is we are actually on the floor now. So just underneath this water is the floor of this crucible furnace.
And you're confident that this is a crucible furnace?
Pretty sure it is a crucible furnace, but it's far, far more complicated than that. We don't know whether it's always been a crucible furnace or even for how long it's been a crucible furnace. We find that there are so many more phases of building and rebuilding that it is really, really complicated. We really don't know what's going on.
Well, I think I've got something that might help. Marilyn has just given me this really fascinating book. It's by this bloke Angus Stein, and he was around in the 18th century, and he was an industrial spy, and he came here snooping around. And tomorrow we're going to see whether we can use this spy book to find out what we've got in our trenches. Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses, and behind-the-scenes insights.